I think we'll get kicked off straight with team number 16 in Aegis. And isn't it appropriate that they were the equal highest climbing team? They climbed 5 spots. They were sync listed at 23. They basically sat at 21st the entire comp until the final day when they decided to win a whole bunch of games. They climbed to 16th in the end. Now, I'm going to go straight to Holmes on this one. Holmes plays with these guys in the home state of South Australia, in Adelaide, and he knows them well. How did you see it, mate? How did they do this big climb on the final day?
Yeah, so I guess I think the way why I reckon this is the way it happened was Aegis has historically been like one of the weaker teams at home, like especially like pack on pack in terms of like individual, mechanical skill ability. Aegis is more of our like, we put the players that are very much up and coming, that are like probably been thrown into it earlier than some of the other guys. So when we're training at home, they'll go into a game against Apex and Aftershock. They do try and play a standard game, but obviously the reality is, I think we kind of said it in the previous video about how you could play strategically like the best game possible, but at the end of the day, if you don't have the mechanical skills relative to your opponents to like back it up and to like actually make things happen, the games are still going to go south. So as a result, they got a really good practice of dumping, because they would go, their attack would go out, it wouldn't be overly successful, and then their defense would get rolled through by like Apex Aftershock, for instance, and then they would have to make the call to dump, go super aggressive, maybe with a 3-man attack initially, and then eventually commit to a dump. Which I believe Bendigo's also historically been pretty effective with dumps. Infamously, an Adelaide team made it to 3rd place in the last Bendigo, and that's by dumping literally every game. So dumping was and is good in Bendigo. So I think I would attribute a lot of their success to, just their ability to, when they know things aren't going their way, they know what they have to do, and they've had so much practice and so many reps of doing that, that they can like pull out these like crazy wins. That being said, I think a fair few of their games that they won on that last day, they actually just won by playing standard. So yeah, kudos to them. They just kind of stuck with it. They figured out their bits and pieces. The order in which they like to attack with people, the setups for their defense. It took them a little while to figure it out, obviously, because they were plateauing for the first few stages. But I always say to my guys, they'll come out of a game, they're really upset that they lost. Maybe they could have won it, and I always say to them, the only day that matters in terms of results is the last day, because you can go on a massive climb. And then they kind of they proved it. So kudos to them.
Yeah. I mean, 3 wins in 2 seconds on final day. I'll take that every day of the week, essentially. Did you get a chance to see these guys much, CV?
I think we versed them one time. That was about it. But yeah, having a look at their last day, 3 first 2 seconds, what on earth were they doing? So what do you think they were doing there, Ryan? Were they dumping, or were they playing a standard strat?
So I think they would start off playing a standard strat, maybe more on a... because obviously I only played them once myself as well in round robin, but in training in the lead up to nationals, they were doing a lot of 3-man attacks. So, kind of not quite a dump, but, the 3-man attacks were like super effective in Bendigo. I think, when I was thinking about like reflecting on how the top tier games were going, a lot of times, if it was a 2-man attack coming up against a 3-man defense, the 2-man attack usually had like a really rough time, but as soon as that 3rd person rocked up, it was like bases were going down like crazy. I remember Wolfpack, for instance, at Prenats 3 did a thing where they would hold, and then suddenly 3-man attack, and they would get the base like literally every time, and then crunch home before you had time to do anything about it. So something in that kind of vein. I think they had Wardy was the in-game leader and their lead attacker. Definitely probably the strongest like mechanical skill player and one of the more experienced players on the team other than Wall.
Finished 22nd on the solo ladder.
Yeah, he's obviously done a really good job for himself. So
just before you move on to that, Ryan, I was just going to highlight that I looked at their 3 wins, and they won one game with 7 bases, then they won the next game with 3 bases, and then they won the next one with 3 bases. And that one of their seconds that they got was with 10 bases. So it was actually playing more like strategically well that got them into the position that they got into by the looks of things. And I think, one of the secrets to going further up the ladder is to being able to play any game, right? Like you can play the dump game if it's on. Like if a team dumps, you've just got to play the dump game. You've got no choice, right? You need to be able to play that game. You need to be able to play the controlled game and all the different variations of it. So it sounds like perhaps the results of having multiple teams to train against in the Adelaide scene is also starting to shine through with some of your mid-tier teams as well. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, absolutely. I think Aegis, in training, even if we came up against Aegis in a training game, for instance, it was never like a complete write-off. Like if you weren't like sharp, like keeping sharp, like strategically and on your mechanical abilities, they could catch you out. Like I'm pretty sure we dropped we dropped a few games to them in training. So they're definitely like capable of like, if you give them an inch, they're going to take an inch. Give them a mile, they take a mile. And yeah, so I think also what was good for Aegis is being able to verse like all kinds of different skill levels of players and teams, because obviously we had like the Apex Aftershock more towards like the top, and then in training Anomaly and Adrenaline were like very competitive with each other, and then Aegis typically in training was like having the least success. Obviously they were probably had a lot more learning opportunities and stuff and all of that, but yeah, they had opportunities to verse like teams of all kinds of tiers, which means they had like a whole variety of like game states that happened. So yeah, and we train every week. In the lead up to Nats, each team was probably able to play like 7 or 8 team games, so it adds up eventually, and you get the reps. And yeah, it pays off when you get to nationals, I guess.
Can you tell us a little bit about some of the individuals who are like the up and coming players on that team?
Yeah, 100%. So if we look at the solo ladder, we actually had, so Wardy was at the top as the lead attacker, highest base average, really high average score of 10k, GRC of 1.49, very impressive. And then the 2 next players were actually 2 like first year players. So Pogsley and Benny. Benny's been playing League for quite a while, but he's always just been, I think he's only like 14, maybe turning 15 soon. So he's always been like a little bit too young, I guess. We didn't have the team slots to kind of allow like more people to play. And then also he just was in a stage of his life where he wasn't like super invested, but I guess he hit like 14. I think it's 14. Apologies if you're not 14, mate. He got to a certain age and he was like, you know what, laser tag's actually kind of cool, and he's actually committed pretty hard in the last few months leading up to Nats, and yeah, he's an absolute gun. He's really good. He's getting really good. I'm excited to see. We haven't had like a good training session back since we've been at Nats, but I'm really excited to come up against players like Benny after they've been to that first Nats. And just see like how they kind of shape up afterwards, because in my experience it's always been like there's a night and day difference between a player before their first Nats and then after their first Nats. So yeah, super impressed with Benny. Pogsley was a really unique player in that he was the first player from Adelaide that came from a site that wasn't Megazone. So a couple years ago we had a site open up at Mount Barker called Game Lobby. It's about an hour's drive from most of us. Yeah, so I was, about 2 years ago when they opened up, I approached them about like trying to like help them run like a local league. So I ran that for about a year and a half, and Pogsley was one of the first players that actually joined. He stuck around through all of it, and then since I've stepped away from going down to Mount Barker to help out run the local leagues, he's stepped up and he's I think he actually works there now. He runs the local leagues. He knows how to do the formats and everything, and mess around with the God Box. So he's really stepped up, and it was quite a historical moment for us, because it's always just been Megazone Noarlunga, and like everyone we know and play comes from there. But now we have this other site an hour away, and to have a player representing that site be able to go to nationals is super exciting, because it makes you think, well, he's, like I said, first You know, he goes to his first nationals, comes back. Now he gets to bring all of that back to the local league at Mount Barker. So I'm really excited to see what happens up there. Yeah, so that's Pogsley, and he was so as far as I'm aware, it was between Pogsley and Benny, depending on who was in the game, I think, that would start out on attack with Wardy, like the opening batsman, and that's definitely reflected in their results. You know, they had the highest average scores of the team other than Wardy, and the highest base averages of the team other than Wardy. So, this team had 4 new people. The 2 other new people were Darwin and SSG. So Darwin's probably played a similar amount of seasons of league to like Pendragon, who we mentioned like on Anomaly in the last review. They're like siblings, so they started around the same time, probably around a year of playing league, and it was only in like the last 5 months of training that they actually started training for nationals, because we heard there was no team slot, so we're like, all right, we're gonna throw everyone's going to nationals this year. But yeah, Darwin's. Yeah, he's just one of those players that started to pick up the skills and like the understanding of the game really quickly. He's a really curious guy. He's always keen to like have a long chat about like strategy and stuff. So he's got a good mind for it, I think. And SSG or Rebecca, she's played for quite a while now, probably a year and a half of league. And then in the same boat as like Darwin, Pendragon, and Benny, they're all the people that we kind of recruited at the same time. Like, no team slots, we're going to send as many people as we can, we think you guys are ready. Bam, you're all, here you go.
Yep.
Have fun. So yeah,
Hurricanes 2.0, mate.
Yeah. So SSG, yeah, just really impressive player. She's got I think she's got a big focus on like being a really good defender and communication and stuff, and that really shows. You know, not many people get past her without her letting the entire arena know. Yeah, it's just one of those things that we see time and time again. Having a lady on your team is really beneficial because their voice really just pierces through everyone else. Yeah, so as far as I'm aware, it was SSG, Darwin, and the Wall were locking down the fort at home. Occasionally going on 3-man attacks and stuff. And then it was, Wardy, Pogsley, and Benny were the offensive powerhouses. So they had a really nice, like, opening setup, I guess, which probably shows, like, in those, you were saying in a couple of the games on the last day that they won by, like, 3 bases. You know, that's kind of like those types of games is where, like, having a really strong starting opening positions, like, super beneficial. So
you don't need to bat. You don't need to bat super deep if that's where the games are going. If they're going to 3, 4, 5 bases, you can have some really strong upper end, and then if you've got some inexperienced players in defence, it doesn't quite expose you kind of as much. And it's something we used to do actually. If we knew that was the case with the team, we would force the games to go to 4 to 9 base or 5 to 9 bases in order to expose the inexperienced players. It's a strategy you can play against teams that are set up like that. So how are they actually going to get better? I know you only played them once, CV. Did you get enough of a chance during that game or on the stream, or you probably would have been prepping for your games? Did you get a chance to see anything or enough to be able to offer something for them to move through to the next tier?
Just the obvious things here. So as soon as those first years they've had a taste now, so they'll go through, take their experience back and work on those skills. So their second nationals will be interesting to see where their upper ceilings are as far as pack-on-pack skill goes. I'd love to see some of those tag ratios bump up a little bit more. I'm not sure... Would Wardy still continue on Aegis, or do you think you could see Wardy probably getting promoted to another team? What do you think there, Brian?
I think it's hard to say just because if the team slots returns next year's, we're obviously going to have... I think we'll end up with 4. So we'll end up with 1 less team slot than we had for Bendigo. So I think, unfortunately, it's kind of really hard to say what's going to happen because there's going to have to be quite a bit of a shuffle, I think. I've got no idea what's going to be happening with the teams, to be honest. I hope Wardy sticks around. You know, he's definitely got the ability to jump up onto like a higher level team. But, you know, he's also just like a pretty cool dude, pretty chill dude. He's like happy to help and bring the up and coming players through, which is, it's something that doesn't get appreciated enough, I think. So yeah, super proud of Wardy and War for taking that team, and really propping them up and giving them a good first nationals.
Totally, it's a
so
massive.
Moving forward. Oh, sorry, there, Ben.
I was
so
just
moving
going to say.
forward, yeah, you go.
I was just going to say how much of a massive contribution it is when you've got players who kind of go, yeah. I know I'm not going to be finaling this year, but I'm going to be helping some young kids get some exposure and get hooked essentially. So I guess it's fair to say that team it's a bit of a question mark about whether they will be together in that form or how it will look next year. But hopefully we see some of those players returning for